Everybody, nice to see y'all. I've been gone from the center for almost a couple weeks now, and yeah, it's nice to see everyone's face. Feels even longer than that. I'm a little bit unprepared today because I had a really wild adventure traveling back to the United States over the last 48 hours or so. Um, Basically, long story short, I was in St. Martin, which is a Caribbean island, on Thursday, and supposed to catch a flight there to New York. Simple, easy peasy. Um, but basically, due to plane maintenance, we missed the first day flight. They had to cancel it. They kept us overnight on the island. And the next day, it was also super delayed. And then they diverted the flight we were supposed to take through Miami. And then all kinds of miscommunications that basically meant about 40 hours of traveling and diverting planes and not sleeping and not eating and being locked in airports. I was stuck in the Charlotte airport from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. with nowhere to go and nothing open. And it was just a really wild travel experience that really kind of pushed all of us to various limits, right? So you're tired and you're confused and you don't know what's going on, and you're hungry and nothing is open and you can't go anywhere. And also you're all in it together, right? So the 70, 80, 100 of us who were on these original flights together, we all kind of got screwed, for lack of a better word, together. And, there's very little interaction. Everyone's just kind of in their own world with their families, with their partners, with their travel buddies, trying to figure things out. But there does kind of, after 40 hours, 48 hours or so, there was this kind of like unspoken camaraderie. We're all going through this ordeal. We're all not sleeping. We all don't know where our bags are. We all don't know where we're going next or how we're going to get to where we need to go. And, you kind of start to recognize people and realize that we're all going through this together. Everybody's cranky. Everybody is hangry. Everybody is kind of in the same boat. And I just really, through the whole ordeal, I really got a feeling of sesshin. There really was a similar kind of feeling to it, just in the sense that of being pushed to your limits, being in it together, having to like keep on going. When you're doing sesshin and you're really tired and you're not passing the koan and your legs are hurting, but you're just dedicated to pushing through that schedule, following the schedule, staying with it, really looking at these limits that are being pushed. And it really felt like sesshin. It really felt like a kind of spiritual practice, right? All the while trying to keep it together, trying to be nice to folks, trying to keep and maintain some semblance of harmony, compassion, patience, in the midst of, a pretty crummy, difficult situation. There's obviously a major difference, right? We choose to voluntarily come to sesshin, and there's a container, and it's a very different kind of deal, whereas this strange travel experience was more kind of an involuntary inconvenience. but still that feeling was there, that session feeling, sticking with it, being bored. You know, I spent a lot of time in airports with literally nothing to do except sit, really, just sit and be with what's going on. And so it made me think of, I was trying to think about how to talk about it. I had a whole other Dharma talk planned, but this was such a notable experience that I wanted to kind of talk about it today. And it made me think of a famous koan that usually we talk about during session. We talk about it a lot. But it's case 17 of the Hekigan Roku, or the Blue Cliff Record. Hekigan Roku is the Japanese phrase for the secrets of the Blue Cliff Record, which is a series of koans that we do in our curriculum at Sweetwater. We have some new people here. Just joined us. Herb, what's going on, man? Nice to see you. And it looks like Patty joined us. Patty, I think this is your first time with us. Would you like to just quickly introduce yourself?
Patty's like a founder. I'm sorry. Patty's like a founder. We sat together at Sweetwater, at Mountain Center and at Sweetwater. So yay, Patty, good to see you. So yeah, it's wonderful to have you back. Sorry to interrupt, but wanted to introduce Patty.
Hello, Jason.
Great, you're here. Yay.
That's very cool. Patty, if you wanted to share anything with anyone, you can, or we can just move on.
This is my first time in a long time, and Jason told me how to join, so I just wanted to come in.
Thank you so much. Thanks for showing up. That's great. I'm
in New York, so.
Gotcha. I'm in New York right now too.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for showing up. And thanks for that background, Sason. So the koan that this reminded me of, like I said, is kind of, usually we talk about it during session, case 17 of the Blue Cliff Record. And it basically goes, a monk asks Kyorin, what is the meaning of Bodhidharmas coming from the West? And Kyorin answers, sitting long and getting tired. That's the extent of the koan, and obviously sesshin involves sitting long and getting tired. And given the level of exhaustion that I was feeling during this travel experience, it made me think of this koan. So I just kind of wanted to go through it really quick, see how it relates to this experience and to all of our experience. So a monk asks Kyorin, and Kyorin is a descendant or a successor of Uman, who is a major character in our lineage. He shows up, or I don't know if he's in our direct lineage, but he shows up a lot in the koans that we do. And he was a major Zen master, I think in the 9th century, I think. Should have looked that up. So Kyorin is now teaching, and one of his students comes to him and asks, what is the meaning of Bodhidharmas coming from the West? And for those of you who are doing koan practice or who come and see a lot of these talks, you may recognize that question. A lot of the koans start with that question. What is the meaning of Bodhidharmas coming from the West? Bodhidharma is credited as the teacher in our lineage who traveled from India to China and more or less introduced Buddhist practice to China. So he's credited with being the ambassador, the bringer of Buddhism to the East, which is why the question is, why did he come from the West? And sometimes you'll see him referred to as the barbarian. That was kind of a little nickname some people gave him, Bodhidharma, the barbarian, because he had a long beard and he was kind of a scruffy guy, so they call him the barbarian. Why did he come from the West? And so this question can be seen literally. What is the meaning of spreading Buddhism? Why did he do that? Why did he decide to bring Buddhism to the East? But I think it also really holds all the deepest spiritual questions that we have, right? That one question, to me, when I think of it, really implies all the questions about meaning. What is the meaning of my giving a Dharma talk right now? What is the meaning of doing anything? What's the point of doing anything? Right? Especially since we know that what the Buddha saw was that as we are right now, without doing anything, is perfect Buddhahood, just as you are right now, with all your flaws, with all of your personality traits, with all of your karma, you are Buddha. That's just it. All the ideas and concepts and paths and strategies and practices, all of those conceptual things are completely empty. So why even have a practice? Why spread it to anybody? Why spread anything? Why make an institution at all? So this question that we see in a lot of these koans and stories, what is the meaning of taking this thing, this entity of practice, and bringing it somewhere else, sharing it with others, when you don't need any of that? Just be your life, just do you, and you already are Buddha. So why do we have institutions? Why do we have teachers? Why do we sit zazen? Why do we do anything? That's really ultimately what I see with this question. What is the meaning? What is the point of doing anything? We're convinced of emptiness. We're convinced of oneness. We're convinced of inherent Buddhahood. All the liturgy, all the texts talk about it. All the teachers talk about it. Maybe I've even had an experience of it, intimacy with that fact that just this is Buddha. So why travel thousands of miles to share this practice? What's the point of that? What's the meaning of having any spiritual practice at all? Anyway, so that's what I think this student is asking. And that's kind of what we're all asking. Hopefully, I hope you have those questions. What am I doing here? Why be a good person? Why have a spiritual practice? What's the meaning of doing anything in my life? I hope that's what's bringing you here. I hope that, even just a small seed of that is a beautiful drive for practice. And so Kyorin answers, sitting long and getting tired. And like I said, we usually talk about this koan during session, because that's what you do. You sit for a long time and you get tired. And in one way, that's, I think, kind of what he's saying. The meaning of spreading the Dharma, the meaning of bringing the Dharma, bringing Buddhist practice to the East, is to encourage long practice, right? That's kind of the literal interpretation of this. Bodhidharma went to China, so that people could experience this practice, just like the Buddha did, sat under the Bodhi tree, sat hard and long and tired for years and years and years to wake up to his true self, to wake up to absolute oneness, to wake up to the innate wisdom and compassion that is each one of us, that is each thing in the universe. So that's kind of one literal, kind of limited interpretation of this koan. I think more importantly, the secret of this koan lies in the assumption that Kyorin and this monk were literally doing sesshin at the moment, right? So at that moment, Kyorin was sitting for a long time and getting tired, right? So I think that's the more important point. There's nothing special about doing sesshin. There's nothing, the meaning of having spiritual practice isn't doing Zen practice. I think what he's saying is that whatever's going on right now is the meaning of everything, right? That's kind of another way of saying the same thing we say with all these talks. Just this. As you are. Thusness. Suchness. Be here now. All these different ways of saying it. I think that's what he's saying, right? I'd have to assume that they were literally just sitting long and tired in that moment, right? So while I'm at the airport on hour 26 of not sleeping and hungry and super tired, what is the meaning of my life? What is the meaning of spiritual practice? What is the meaning of anything? What is the point of this totally empty existence? Missing your flight and getting tired. Being cranky and short-tempered with the American Airlines agent. In that moment, just this is the meaning of everything. And, it's one thing to say that, but to truly embody that in every moment, that just this, whatever's going on, whether I'm dealing with difficult children, or sick at home with COVID, or at a party having fun, whatever it is, just as I'm manifesting my life is the reason Bodhidharma came from the West, the reason the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree, the reason you come to Sweetwater or sign on to the Zoom and sit Zazen is to just fully be this moment. And it's practically impossible to do that sincerely and authentically. And so that's I think kind of why I had that session feeling at the various airports that I was at. I think I've been in 4 airports in the last 48 hours. And that was my practice, to really just be exhausted, cranky, yelling at the agent. So nothing special about sitting long, nothing special about getting tired, but there is something special about really being Buddha, being Bodhidharma, being your true self, being totally one with whatever is right now, whatever it looks like. It's not peaceful, it's not tranquil, it doesn't look like any one thing. It just looks like whatever is going on right now. That's all there is. That's it. Just quickly, I wanted to also look at the introduction to this koan, once you start getting into these books, you have the main case of the koan, and then you also have introductions to the koan, and then you have verses on the koan. So the introduction here I just think is really nice, and I'll just do it really quickly. So, cutting through nails and breaking steel for the first time, one could be called a master of the first principle. That's the first sentence. So cutting through nails, breaking steel, to me, feels like cutting through self, cutting through little self, right? Nails and steel, we think of these really hard things. I think about hammering a nail through wood and that suction you get. Those things are stuck together. And that's kind of what we do as we construct and enforce our ego and our sense of self. That's kind of what we're doing as we get conditioned and live through our small self, our separate self. We enforce it, we make it like steel. So cutting through nails, breaking steel, that to me is, having that experience of oneness, that experience of no separation, that experience of my innate Buddhahood. So cutting through steel for the first time, one could be called a master of the first principle of oneness. And this first time, I think, is interesting because in one way it could mean literally the first little glimpse that all of us have, the first Kensho experience, that first kind of awakening experience that you have on the cushion, or off the cushion, I suppose. But I don't really think he's talking about that there. It's not about literally the first time you have that experience. I think what they're saying is every time is the first time, right? This practice of awakening is constant. Every time you cut through the steel of your ego is like the first time. We have to see it that way, right? If we're counting awakening experiences we have, if we have one awakening experience and hold on to it, I had that one experience that one time and now I have that, that's, like holding on to air. So, forget about that. The only way to really cultivate that experience of cutting through steel is to really have it be the first time all the time. It's kind of like, it reminded me of that, the book we're reading in our anti-racist study group, How to Be an Anti-Racist is the name of the book. And he talks about being racist and being anti-racist as a fluid thing, right? It's not like you learn something or you break your ignorance and then all of a sudden you are an anti-racist. He's saying that constantly it's like a flow. Every moment we're stepping in and out of racist ideas, anti-racist ideas, racist behavior, anti-racist behavior. We have to constantly be flowing and learning and growing and being aware of where we're at. And I think that's what this is pointing to. We're constantly, every moment, given the opportunity to cut through steel, or be locked in our steel cage of the ego. It's a constant practice, having to be aware of and practice with our self, our separateness. So let every moment, every time you sit on the cushion, let that be the first time. That feeling of freshness, that feeling of newness, enthusiasm. Let every moment be the first time you're cutting through that steel barrier. If you run away from arrows and evade swords, you will be a failure in Zen. So that's kind of, the arrows and the swords are this practice. All these opportunities of cutting through the steel and nails of our ego. That's why session is hard. That's why it hurts. That's why you get tired. That's why you get hungry. That's why you get bored. These are all steel. These are all arrows and swords. Just like being tired at the airport, being hungry, being bored, being tired of sitting on your feet. Even, the reason why the plane was delayed for 2 days was because they had to work on it. So then you got to step onto a plane on some tiny little airport on an island that needed work for 2 days. And so for those of us who aren't the best flyers, I was literally like having an anxiety attack for, 3 hours straight on that flight. So those are arrows and swords too. Anything that pushes us, that pokes us, are opportunities to cut through my separateness. And then it ends, when the foaming billows wash the sky, what will you do with yourself then? So I imagine, not quite sure what they mean, but I imagine that the foaming billows, sounds like waves to me, foaming billows. And waves are often used to represent the happenings of our life, all the dharmas, all the phenomena of our life. So when the foaming billows wash the sky, I imagine at certain times of day, sometimes if you look at the horizon on the ocean, it kind of looks like it blends with the sky, right? So you kind of can't see where the horizon ends and the sky begins, that kind of deal. So when the waves are washing the sky, the waves which are so low, it's almost the lowest point, right? The waves on the ocean. And the sky is obviously the highest thing we can see. So when the lowest and the highest blend as one, when everything is one, when there is totally no separation in your life, when you are one with everything, what does that look like? How can I bring that to exhaustion and crankiness and all the most challenging parts of my life and all the most pleasant and blissful and amazing and beautiful parts of my life? How do I really manifest no separation? How do I manifest the meaning of the ancient sages passing down awakening? How can I manifest that in every single moment of my life as it is right now?